I wonder if you really see Israel as ready to agree to a ceasefire here.
Well, of course, we don't know at this point, but the Israelis are going to insist, as they should, that there be a buffer zone, that Hezbollah be moved back, so they're not constantly posing a threat to the Israelis in the northern part of Israel, as they have been doing over the years. So pushing them back to an area which makes it less that makes the Israelis less vulnerable will be important. So I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to insist upon that. And now, at least, it seems as if the leadership of Hezbollah is prepared to make those kinds of concessions. I also suspect that Iran is very much playing a role in this. I don't think Iran wants to see Lebanon reduced to what we're seeing and have seen in Gaza. And so I assume that Hezbollah is getting pushed from the Iranians as well as being pummeled by the Israelis. So it's in their interest to make a deal as such. And I think that the Israelis would like to achieve one if they can, based on the premise of pushing the Hezbollah back as far as they can.
So are you suggesting, sir, that Hezbollah has been materially weakened by Israeli forces to a point that it may be difficult for them to either reconstitute themselves or continue a pace fighting them as they have been? What exactly, if it ends in the near term, this particular conflict, will Israel have accomplished in terms of eliminating a threat for an extended period of time, not just the immediate future?
Well, that is key, the question of the length of time. They had an agreement going back to 2006. That agreement has eroded over the years, and so the Israelis are reluctant to strike another agreement along the same lines. And so I think the Israelis will be very hard over on that issue of how far back Hezbollah can be removed. And I would assume that that's going to be key for them. Ultimately, I don't think the Israelis are going to be able to eliminate Hezbollah, certainly as an ideology. They are fully integrated into the Lebanese society. So uprooting them and pulling them out of the political integration will be more difficult. As from a military point of view, I think that the Israelis have been successful in decapitating the leadership. So I think Hezbollah is struggling right now and not having a top echelon of people to give them military guidance and capabilities. How long that will last, we've been through this so many times before. You keep thinking you're knocking out leadership. It's whack-a-mole in terms of, well, we got these top leaders, and a year later or less, you've got more top leaders coming. So the real issue is, can you push them back? Can you reduce the threat to the Israelis? And can the Israelis reconstitute that war if need be? This is one of the key sticking points, as I understand it. The Israelis want to be able to resume the war in the event that Hezbollah starts it over again. And that would be a key component to any kind of an agreement, saying that a ceasefire stays in effect unless someone violates it. And that has to be a violation that's clear and present danger, a present danger threat to the Israelis in order to back away from the ceasefire. But they need to have that kind of reassurance.
Well, and assuming they get that reassurance with this particular adversary, what about with Hamas, sir? Do you think a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah would then pave the way for a similar cessation of hostilities in Gaza, or is that one much more complicated?
Well, as I understand it, Hezbollah has indicated they're going to withdraw their support from Hamas. That, too, is an important signal that if they're prepared to pull back their support for Hamas, what does that mean as far as Iran is concerned? Is Iran going to continue to push and support Hamas under these circumstances, where Iran itself has been under attack directly from the Israelis? The Iranians have fired into Israeli territory, but for the very first time, most recently, the Israelis have been able to penetrate Iranian air defenses to go in and strike almost at will key targets. And so Iran has to be concerned, do I really want to continue to push and support Hamas and put myself at risk as well? So there are a lot of issues at play here, but Israel's strength and capability is pretty dominant right now.
Well, and both Israel and Iran are aware that 56 days from now, there will be a new commander-in-chief and president of the United States. How do you expect, sir, that policy toward the Middle East will change under this incoming Trump administration?
Well, President-elect Trump has said to Prime Minister Netanyahu, finish the job. Now, what does that mean exactly? Does it mean eliminating Hamas as a fighting force? Does it mean eliminating Hamas as an ideology with the Palestinians? And so finish the job, it can be interpreted a different way. It might be finishing the job once you reduce the military capability of Hamas and you get the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, also UAE and others to say, we want to see a different leadership on the part of the Palestinian people in place. We want to rebuild the economy for the people of the Gazans and those in the West Bank. And that will bring long-term prosperity to that part, to the Palestinians for sure, but also to the security of Israel. If they have the Israelis, the Saudis, the UAE, and others who are working with Israel, that really does tend to isolate Iran going forward into the future. And that's the kind of security I think the Israelis really need.
Well, and as we consider this incoming administration, he obviously has asked one person in particular to be part of it and lead the Department of Defense, the Defense Secretary designate Pete Hegseth. You are one of very few people who know what it is to lead the U.S. Defense Department, to know what is required to actually be able to serve in that role. Is he qualified for it?
Well, we'll have to wait and see whether he receives the endorsement of the United States Senate. He has the education. He's highly educated. He's served in uniform. He's received honors in battle. So from that perspective, I think he gets very high marks. The real issue coming up is what is his philosophy in terms of how is he going to manage the largest government agency in the United States and one of the biggest in the world. And that has multiple organs you have to be concerned about. You have to be concerned, certainly you have to satisfy the commander-in-chief in terms of his policy. You also have to deal with Capitol Hill, how you manage that relationship. You have to also manage your allies' relationship. What are our allies doing to support this relationship over the years, and are they measuring up to their responsibilities? So you have a number of constituencies: the president, the Congress, our allies, the establishment, the defense establishment itself. The families are critical. What is his position about the families? We know he's raised questions about women, specifically women in combat. I can tell you they are integrated into our military in a way that we can't fight our wars without them. So how he defines women in combat will be key. Whether he is seeking to pull them out of, quote, combat roles, well, what does that mean? Does it mean pulling a trigger on the front lines of the battlefield, or managing a drone or high-performance aircraft, or some of our finest ships that they're sailing? So all of these issues are going to come before the United States Senate, and those are the kinds of questions he'll need to address. And then if the Senate is satisfied, then certainly he'll be carrying on behalf of the President of the United States and the American people.